Well, this is kinetic politics because we've gone from Epstein to Greenland to Minneapolis. And just knowing him, he's going to pull out of Minneapolis, but he's going to do something else because he feels like he's engaged in the political equivalent of kinetic warfare. He has to keep these scandals going because if he doesn't, remember, if he doesn't, then it all goes back to Epstein. The Democrats should not forget that. And this is my suggestion for the messaging in 2026. House Bill 1 is to subpoena every record associated with the Epstein file and begin an immediate investigation. That's the first thing we're going to do.
James, there are events and moments that prove seminal. I think January in Minneapolis may be one. It's hard to believe this is happening in America. Untrained forces that are led by jackbooted thugs are committing murder and mayhem and then lying about it. The White House, Kristi Noem and Stephen Miller all think they think the public that we're just idiots. The videos of Alex Pretty's murder are clear cut. You're trying to help a woman who was being pushed down, and then he was attacked by ICE agents. He was brandishing something. It was a video phone, not a gun. They knocked him down. One of the agents took the gun he was lawfully carrying, and then the other agents or others shot him, riddling his body with 10 bullets. Noam called him a domestic terrorist. That's a lie. He was a nurse, an ICU nurse taking care of veterans. He was praised by colleagues. Greg Bovino, who led ICE, he was pushed out. Fine, good riddance. They all ought to leave. And at the top of it would be Kristi Noem. I'm just disgusted. Someone, by the way, ought to look at that CNN interview that Dana Bash did with Bovino. She caught him in one lie after another. Finally, this comes down, James, to two realities. One, Trump wants an inner city race war, if he can. And two, Pam Bondi gave it away when she said, okay, we'll pull the troops out, but first you have to turn over all your voter files. What? This is about trying to fix the election in November. What they ought to gear up to do is get the hell out of Minneapolis.
Well, the Minneapolis, but what's happened here, the White House, first of all, is in terrible shape. The polling numbers are just awful. And by the way, they continue to deteriorate. The images of Minneapolis are going to stick in people's minds. Okay, that this is just not going to go away. But now he has a residue of Susie Wiles, okay, and Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller is clearly on the downside. And clearly Kristi Noem was aligned with him. So there's a huge internal mess within the White House at a time when everything around them is declining. And to the extent that we can do anything, we just have to keep the pressure and attention on this really substantial rift. They got rid of Bovino. They said that son of a bitch back to California like he never existed. But the aftermath of this is going to be pretty draconian for them. And they're, of course, they're going to leave Minneapolis. You know, if we get in the movie Gandhi, when one of the British imperialists looked at Gandhi and said, "You don't expect us to just walk out and leave now, do you?" He said, "Yes, that's exactly what you're going to do. You're going to walk out and leave." That's what they're going to do in Minneapolis. They are going to walk out and leave. But the aftermath is going to be very ugly. The dissension is going to be very ugly. And I predict one thing, the central message of Republican Senate candidates in 2026, when they're asked the inevitable question, what do you disagree with the Trump administration on? The answer is going to be Stephen Miller. He's going to be the fall guy. I can see debate prep right now. But I was never comfortable with Stephen Miller being there. Then, so good Democratic research has got to do anything they can to show that there's some connection there. I think it's a great answer, but it's the answer you're going to hear. And Stephen Miller is and he's got followers. Okay, there are people that actually like what he's doing. Not very many in the general public, but I don't see how this guy's going to last much longer. I really don't.
Well, I don't either. It's always easy to blame people like Stephen Miller when the problem, of course, as we both
Of
know, is
course.
Trump. I think there are two other points I would make here that a week ago I would have said, it's a waste of time. One is impeachment, and the other is a government shutdown. You're not going to impeach Trump. That's just a bad, can't be done. But there is a compelling case to impeach Pam Bondi. She may be gone before that is possible, but already you have 150 Democrats. She's totally incompetent. She's surrounded by third raters like Corey Lewandowski. She's a liar. And I think, frankly, that most of the public would say, yeah, we ought to get rid of her. If he won't fire, impeach her. Don't think it's going to happen, but I think if I were a House Democrat, I surely as hell would join that chorus. On a shutdown, which could happen in a couple days, I really did think, hey, we don't need to go through that again. But I've changed my mind. I think it would be unconscionable to fund this out of control, trigger happy ICE without major changes that try to assure that something like the killings of Renee Good and Alex Jetty won't happen again, even at the risk of a shutdown if need be. Make the Republicans defend ICE because that's what it would be about. I'm not sure how it's going to play out, but I hope that I hope this time the Senate Democrats hold tough because I think some Republicans on that issue will start to cave.
Well, okay, if you think the situation is as bad as I do, and I think it's really bad, I think it's deteriorating. As you know, and I think you and I share this view, we're going to pick up a lot of Senate seats. Let me tell this to our listeners right now. It's not impossible that in the year 2027, Donald John Trump is impeached by the House and convicted by the Senate. Whoa, wait a minute, James. I can understand that. We're going to win the House. Of course, they vote articles of impeachment, but you need 2/3 of the senators, and you're going to end up with 54, maybe. Right? However, in the wake of an electoral catastrophe like we're going to have in 2026, and when the Republican Party looks toward 2028, you might find 15 Republican senators who say, fuck this, I'm going to impeach, I'm going to vote to convict the bastard because as long as he's around, we got no chance. I'm not saying this is a 50-50 scenario, but I'm saying this is something that will be on the table. This is something to think about. He is in danger of being impeached and convicted next year. And the math is you can go, you have let's just say you end up with 54 Democratic senators. So you got 54, you need what, 67?
Need 13 Republicans.
You need 13 Republicans. That's not impossible to see in the wake of a catastrophic election like they're going to have in 2026. That's not impossible to see when you look forward to 2028 and how the issues are lining up there. Always the trouble was when you broke with Trump, you broke with his voters, and you couldn't win an election without his voters. His voters are starting to break for him. It is not impossible. I didn't say, oh, it's going to happen because I don't know any more than anybody else. But this is only it's a bank shot, but it's one bank. It's not a double bank shot.
Well, it's certainly meritorious. I'm skeptical that it'll happen, but I think you put out a good warning. Let me return, if I can, just a couple things on Minneapolis. One, Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General, who's proven to be just as bad as the rest of them, said that the idea when Minneapolis and Democrats were seeking an order to make sure they don't get rid of any evidence, said, yeah, of course we're not going to get rid of any evidence. I mean, you know we wouldn't do that. No, I don't know that, Mr. Blanche. I think you would. I don't trust you. I don't trust anyone in this Department of Justice. I think I'm not even sure with with an order that forces them not to get rid of stuff that they would obey it. That's the kind of Department of Justice we have today. The other thing is, I don't know whether I'm sure no federal case will be brought against any of those ICE agents. You can bring cases in state and local courts there is a problem, as our friend Seth Waxman explained to us on Sunday, a so-called supremacy clause. But I think that mainly, which means that basically, when there's a law enforcement action by a federal official, that a state jurisdiction can't come in and indict them. But that's when they're doing their job. These people were not doing their job. They were disobeying the law. They were disobeying their mandate. So I think they are going to get out of Minneapolis, James. You're right, but I don't think we've heard the end of Minneapolis.
No, no, just like we had heard at the end of India. Yeah, they're going to get out, but
Right.
I want to ask, talk about, by the way, this is catastrophic for the United States. The EU and India just finalized this huge trade deal. We'll talk about it during the show, but it's pretty significant. But of course, you're correct. I wouldn't trust these people. Have proven time and time again, you can't trust them on anything. I trust them as much as I trust a fart, which is not very much.
Well, let's say Stephen Miller goes. Does it change anything?
Well, some. I mean, people won't have to look at him again. You won't see us picturing.
Well, that's an important reason, James.
That's some comfort. But the kind of people around him in the odious, blood and soil, nationalistic, unpatriotic, anti-American views that he holds will still be a substantial part of that administration. And the other guy that we're forgetting who still exists is Russell Voigt. And that whole crowd, they hadn't gone anywhere. They're just sitting there systematically wrecking the entire federal government right in front of us. And, I guess another thing, too, is all of this, I think Phil Sheridan was one of the originators, kinetic warfare, keep going. Well, this is kinetic politics because we've gone from Epstein to Greenland to Minneapolis. And just knowing him, he's going to pull out of Minneapolis, but he's going to do something else because he feels like he's engaged in the political equivalent of kinetic warfare. He has to keep these scandals going because if he doesn't, remember, if he doesn't, then it all goes back to Epstein. The Democrats should not forget that. And this is my suggestion for the messaging in 2026. House Bill 1 is to subpoena every record associated with the Epstein file and begin an immediate investigation. That's the first thing we're going to do. And I know a lot of good government types don't want to hear this, but the Democrats, when they come back in 2027, they're not there to legislate. They're there to investigate because there ain't nothing to legislate. You're not going to get veto-proof majorities on the things that you need to do. You can show it. You can make them. You can force votes. Pick 10 things that are really popular that they can't be for, they'll veto and do it. But your primary mission will be to investigate and bring the truth to the American people, because I know something and you know something. The American people can handle the truth. They can handle it. I promise you.
Certainly that's the case. And I think it has to be done methodically. It has to be done carefully. It has to be done selectively because there are so goddamn many things to investigate, right. James. It's just unbelievable. And, we said a couple of weeks ago on this show why it would be, absolutely crazy if New York Democrats unseat Dan Goldman, one of the few investigators, really, really top-notch investigators, but there are others too that can do it, and they can have a minimal effect on legislation. For instance, appropriations. They're not going to be funding ICE at the levels that these people expect. But you're right. It is going to be it really is going to amount to an accounting, and that's what Trump fears. And I think that, again, going back to the Pam Bondi letter, they plan to do anything it takes to steal this election. And I think the biggest story for the rest of 2026 will be what happens in the fall, and are we able to stop them from what will be the most outrageous actions we've ever seen. They will send troops in if need be. They will go. They will take ballot boxes, impound ballot boxes. They will intimidate voters because they know they're headed for what you've been saying for months, a big, big defeat otherwise.
Right. And, if you put your ear to the political ground, you will hear hoof prints in the distance. These are very encouraging hoof prints because the cavalry is coming. The cavalry is going to be led by, I think, all likelihood, two people: Congressman Jamie Raskin of Maryland and Senator Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island. When the deluge comes, and the deluge is coming in November, they are not just going to start thinking about how to investigate. They're already doing it. These are not rookies. These are people that know what they're doing and know how to conduct this. And they got people like Congressman Goldman, who's invaluable. Of course, that's why the Unitarians want him out, because he's actually competent. Uh, and there are other people. You remember, we got some pretty talented people. And I keep emphasizing that. And when the deluge comes, we're going to be ready for it. I fully
Yep.
believe that. We're not going to be starting up and trying to figure out where everything is. And they're going to have all the staff hired. They're going to have all the lawyers in place. They're going to have all the investigators in place. And when the Congress reconvenes on January 3rd, I guess it is, or something, early January of 2027, they're going to be they're hitting the ground running. They're already running. So have
James,
faith. They got good people.
I totally agree with you, but again, I just want to say we got to be so goddamn well prepared for what's going to happen this fall, because they're going to do things that we haven't even imagined before. It'll make what they try to do in 2020 look like child's play, and I think we will be prepared. But I think that is a danger, and
So,
so
so
once we get through that.
Look, the people that are in place that are doing this, and maybe we should do a show. What is the possible ways they could try to circumvent election? I don't know. I've heard people say they might try martial law, they might try confiscating ballots. I don't know, but maybe we should do a speculative show just on what strategies they might employ and what we should do to defend against
I
these
think
strategies.
that's a great idea, and we ought to do it soon. And I think we will commit to you out there that there's going to be a show sometime, let's say in February, going through this, because it really is, something that could be really frightening.